Hi, I am Adam Lupel, and I am speaking to you from New York City, where I am the Vice President of the International Peace Institute, an independent nonprofit that works with the United Nations and other partners to promote peace, security, and sustainable development. The question of why Indigenous voices are not better understood fills me with a sense of humility. I don't know the answer. But it reminds me of someone, a man named Yule, I once met on the shores of Lake Nicaragua. I was there in the early 1990s as a volunteer, working with a rural community recovering from civil war. He came up to me and a colleague one quiet morning, hesitantly, and began to tell us his story. He was a member of the Mosquito people of the Atlantic coast near the border with Honduras, some 600 kilometers away, and he had been on the run, fleeing for his life for days, maybe weeks at the time. He had been involved in a movement resisting government control over indigenous lands and was imprisoned with his twin brother in terrible conditions for the previous 10 years. Upon release, his brother was assassinated, and so fearing for his own life, he had fled and was trying to make his way to Costa Rica. He told us how that morning he had climbed a tree to harvest a coconut to eat, but was accused of stealing, which filled him with great shame. Where he was from, the fruits of the earth were communal goods available to all, not the individual property of the few. We brought him bread and cheese and continued talking for hours about his people, about the country, about the complexities of post-conflict politics. He was incredibly thoughtful, politically sophisticated, and sensitive. The next day, we helped him to board a ferry to continue on his journey, and I never heard from him again. But I have continued to think of him all these years. Why is it that non-Indigenous people don't listen to what Indigenous people are saying? I don't know. I believe many people want to hear Indigenous voices, long for the wisdom they may provide, but our larger institutional systems, political, social, economic, have been historically set up in opposition to Indigenous communities and have sought to control them, whether through processes of colonization or modernization, rather than listen to them. And perhaps those that want to hear them too often understand Indigenous perspectives as something exotic or irretrievably ancient, unavoidably of the past rather than the present, complex and engaged in our world. But that is a mistake. We need to work together to understand how Indigenous perspectives are very much applicable and necessary to our current predicament and merit meaningful inclusion in our deliberations and decision-making. But there is a problem. Indigenous voices are not only unheard, they are under attack. In 2020, the Indigenous-led NGO Cultural Survival documented 56 murders, 11 disappearances, and 23 violent attacks against Indigenous human rights and environmental defenders in Latin America alone, like you. And so what I do know, thinking back to that encounter on the shores of Lake Nicaragua, is that if Indigenous voices are to be heard and empowered to contribute to our collective understanding of the world, they have to be made safe. And ensuring that safety is something we would all benefit from. I know I benefited greatly from that encounter so many years ago. Thank you.